Alrighty, friends, family, beautiful patrons, or the people who have come to this premium land on a free dime, on a freebie. But mostly my friends on Twitch over here, twitch.tv/Wolsky Live. That's WOLSKYLIVE. This is the Wlog. It's a vlog. It's a podcast. It's a live radio show. It's a Twitch stream with I think the air conditioning is still running, and I could take care of that, or I could just hope that no one else hears that. I don't think anybody else does. Hi, how are you doing? You are here. This is, of course, free for people on patreon.com/M3podcast, but look at all the other beautiful things that are up there. Why don't you take a gander, take a look, take a look-see, take a burp-see. Understand that the burp can't run strong through all of the M3 produced content, not just the main show. Wherever this voice goes, many burps will follow. Many burps will follow. Okay, I'm Alex Wolsky, and I would like to talk to you today about, since this is on, this is on Twitch, it seems fitting to speak of, I don't even think I've talked about games in anything where I'm just chatting. But I do want to talk to you about the game and the series that means the most to me, and that's Hideo Kojima's masterpiece, or series of masterpieces, Metal Gear. A lot has been said about Metal Gear by people a lot more eloquent than me, and content produced a lot better than me, but I'd just like to give you my version and what it was like to find it at, I can't even remember what age I was, maybe like 9, something like that. It was in 2002 when it came out, so I'd have to kind of think. Maybe about 10 years old, actually, because I was born in 1992. So about 10 years old. And just kind of take you from the first game I played, how it affected what I expect from a game. And as all these vlogs do, it's going to deviate into something crazy. Especially me talking about my lazy eye, which I've been speaking a lot about before the audio version started. But those watching on YouTube or watching the video replay, the highlight, you've not heard of it. So I see it. It's there. I still think I'm handsome, but no, I see it. Okay. So I first got my hands on a Hideo Kojima game in 2000. I think it was about 2. And it was Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. That was the very first one that I had ever played. I can't even remember how I came across it. I think I can't really remember how I came across any games back in the day. I just came across them. Box art. There wasn't a lot of commercials for games. There was games that I knew I wanted. I always played them. Again, I still to this day, like 6th generation sports games are my favorite video games. They are. I can't get away from it. Like, in terms of what I'm willing to sink my time into and sink my energy into, and like actual effort and thought. It's that 6th generation, mainly of the EA games, but other ones too. Turn my mic up just a little bit, but outside of that, keep my mic up just a little bit more. Sorry about that. Metal Gear jumped out at me, I think, within the first couple of minutes as something that was going to be life-changing. And knowing that at like 9 and 10 is a really weird feeling. It is. It's not even like a comfortable feeling sometimes, like in a lot of cases when like you have those, oh my God, life is changing moments, it's not positive. But I can remember playing the tanker level. I can remember that first cutscene with Solid Snake walking down the, I think it was Manhattan Bridge, whatever it was, George Washington. I can't remember what bridge it is. I'm from Baltimore. I don't know those crazy northern bridges. But I remember that cutscene. I just wasn't into movies like that at the time. Like this was my introduction to like so many things at once. So many, because Hideo Kojima was famous for his homages. Like this was just a big homage to action cinema, dramatic action cinema, all kind of wrapped into one. And I couldn't process that as a 9-10-year-old kid. But it was still, it's implanted in my head. I remember it. I remember seeing it being like, wow, what is this? Like, I'm used to Crash Bandicoot. I'm used to God, and I had a PS2 for not that long at this point, so I mean, maybe I played some platformers. I know Ratchet and Clank was one of the first games that I had. Obviously, that was awesome. It was super cool, but it still looked like a video game. It wasn't meant to be the cinematic experience that blew you away and knocked you off your ass. But the just that the landing, the superhero landing, the unnecessary amount of bullshit, just the over the topness. It just didn't feel over the top, and that introduction for a lot of people, their introduction to Solid Snake was on the PS1. I actually feel spoiled that my first glimpse of this guy, of Solid Snake, is him making the superhero return entrance in Metal Gear Solid 2, where you could really make his face out. You could see him. He looked like a person. He had a voice and a personality. Not that he didn't have a voice and a personality in the first game, but being able to put a face to that with like expressions is very, very helpful. So immediately I just fell in love with this character. He's still my favorite character in games. So there's almost like, it sounds weird saying it, it's not a real connection, but you feel like a connection to that character's struggle and story. And, not that they're a real thing, but again, I can't relate to being Solid Snake, but just the feelings that it makes you feel. It's probably the least crazy way I can describe it. But I am in no way, shape, or form ever going to be anything like Solid Snake, no matter how many walks I go on to try to get into shape. Anyway. I want to become famous. Oh, fucking great. All right, so here we go. Logs, people breaking my fucking train of thought. I got to go ban some dill hole. What is it? We're going to ban him. Ban him. Ban him. Ban him. There it is. That's gone. That happens sometimes. Just like random bots will come up and put shit in there and throw off your train of thought and ruin your Wlog. Ruin your gosh darn Wlog. Making your life seem like some sort of joke. It's okay. Breathe. Bring it back. What would Solid Snake do in this situation? Because he wouldn't kill. He's kind of like Batman. He's like Batman who will kill, who understands that sometimes you need to kill. Or understands that sometimes like your methods of not being lethal will make more people die. There's actually a lot of similarities between Solid Snake and Batman. I don't feel like a lot of people talk about it. There's a ton. We can maybe get into that. Anyway, sorry. This fucking asshole threw me off, man. This bot. All right. Solid Snake. My boy. So you immediately cut into, like that opening title screen, and then it flashes across like Metal Gear Solid 2, the movie, and then he goes over and kind of touches his neck. I was like, what the fuck is he doing? And then the Kodak comes up, and the best Kodak was the Metal Gear Solid 2 Kodak, by far, the best. I don't want to hear shit about none of them. I wish they just kept the Kodak in all the games. That's the one thing. I like how each game has their own style. I really wish the Metal Gear Solid 2 Kodak was the only one that they used, because it was so cool. And who would have thought exposition dumps could be so pretty looking and just like that blank background? Like, it was just so minimalist, but not. You could do so much with it. I was so enthralled with every single Kodak call. That first time, even like when I play through it now, I don't ever skip Kodak calls. Ever. Wipe below. There's some spittle on my screen. I have to take care of that. Otacon wouldn't like that. But then you're faced with like I mentioned, Otacon, a character who you don't really see in the flesh until late in the game, and who I'd never met, and I don't have a connection to, because again, I hadn't played the first game yet, and I just through that first call with Otacon, I was hooked. I was invested in who these people are. They were clearly the good guys, and that's okay. Again, I sound a little like Bret Hart here. They cheer the good guy, they boo the good guys and cheer the bad guys, and Shawn Michaels. I love Bret Hart so much, but I like that. I like good guys. I like to cheer good guys on. I mean, I like cool, edgy bad guys as much as the next person, but I like to play as the good guy. I like to be on the side that's righteous, and they let you know that immediately without even playing the first game, which I appreciated. It felt like there was more nods to the first game. Like, yeah, this is in the same universe, but we're doing something else here. Maybe they knew that there was a lot of new players that were going to come in for this one, because we'll talk about in 3, they don't give a fuck. In Metal Gear Solid 3, they're like, keep up, asshole, or get left behind. But just the Kodak and everything about it added so many hours to that game for me. Truly made that like first playthrough felt like, I couldn't tell you how long it was, but it felt like what I would have put into like a 80-90 hour playthrough now. It really felt the way I felt after I finished all of The Witcher 3 for the first time, which took me about 112 hours to get to like where I finished, like not hit everything, but to get to where I was like, okay, I didn't play anymore. I finished the main story, both DLCs, and a shit ton of side quests. I mean, as much as you can do. There's so much to do in that game. But that took about 112 hours. That I can remember that feeling as a kid. So maybe it could have been like 20 or 30. I don't know. But those Kodak calls, those optional ones, those kind of constantly calling the colonel, whoever you were, until you started getting repeat messages, which wasn't a lot, man. You had to get through a lot. Was enthralling to me. And it made getting through the game that much more satisfying, especially the first time. It was hard. I remember it being hard because I'm talking so much about the story, but shit, dude, that gameplay was beautiful. It was amazing. It was challenging, but it made sense. It was a game with beautiful style. You got to feel like you were undercover on a boat and it was raining, you had a gun, but at the same time, like you were limited by what a PlayStation 2 controller could do and what a game was supposed to be. It didn't need to be super realistic like MGS5, which again I love, but that wasn't the approach at all. It wasn't even close to that. It was a puzzle game in a sense. Like when you go up on the tanker for the first time, there's 3 guards that move in the same sort of pattern. It really introduces the mechanics like well off the bat immediately. Just like, hey, these are how they move. This is how far they could see you. You know, the vision cone on the radar. It kind of taught you about disposing bodies, hanging, just how to move in the game. Again, it's a puzzle game. At its core, Metal Gear Solid is sort of a puzzle game. Find the best way, most creative way, the most violent way to get past all these guys. You do no-kill runs. Just so much replayability in a story-driven game, too, which is crazy. So you have one part where you want to get through it. Like the first time you play through it, you're like, I want to get through these gameplay segments as fast as possible. I want to see what happens next in the story. You do that a couple of times, and then you start playing through it again. You're like, all right, I want to hang out in these gameplay segments as long as I can. I remember when I was younger, after I'd played through the game a couple of times, I got relatively good at it. As good as I could be at a game. Because as much as I love games, I'm awful at them. I remember like finding the most creative ways to take out the 3 guards on top of the tanker. I remember doing that in speedrun style. And with that, I'll take a quick break to say hello to Lawman, one of our most faithful listeners, watchers, supporters. And today, young man, we're preaching the gospel of Metal Gear. So I hope you will I hope you will join us, kneel at the altar, and maybe learn a little something. I'll put the link in the Discord to the audio version so you can check it out too. Or the edited video version when I put it out on YouTube and highlight it. So, quick sip of water. We're going to continue on our conversation. And no, not that kind of metal. It's Metal Gear Solid, the greatest game of all time. So, continuing on. And Lawman, I'm going to check the chat periodically in the pauses. So, questions, things you want to say, get in there. I'll see it, buddy. All right, anyway. I touched on the Kodak enough. I'll just hop right back into getting into like the heart of the tanker with Snake. I guess I'm kind of breaking down like what I thought of the story of the second one. Getting inside, again, more gameplay mechanics revealed. More like this is a fucking puzzle game. And especially when you're doing harder difficulties, which added to that replayability value. They would add extra guards, or they'd be able to see farther. You know what I mean? Shit like that. But then getting down low, seeing a Metal Gear for the first time, realizing this is also kind of like a monster game. This is a horror game in a way. I just couldn't believe it. And that's what I need out of games. That's what I need out of games. Excuse me. Actually, no, excuse me. We don't do excuse me's here. We count the burps. That's 2. But it made me... Every game was chasing... I mean, since. Like, my entire journey through gaming has been chasing that high again. Trying to recapture what it was like to play Metal Gear Solid for the first time. Metal Gear Solid 2. Because truthfully, and I must admit, I've never played Metal Gear Solid 1 in its true form. I haven't. I've played Twin Snakes, and I need to go back and do it. I know I'm not a true fan, but I've actually watched... I'm so much of a fan that I've watched every single Metal Gear game as a movie on Future Sound. I think it's Future Sound. No, not Future Sound. Kefka Productions. I'll put a link in it somewhere. But that was 2 for me. I mean, obviously, like, a lot of people were pissed off at the Raiden twist. The fact that there was a second playable character. I didn't care. I didn't know. I didn't know any better. I was really thankful for my time with Snake. And when he came back as Iroquois Pliskin, I was like, and again, spoiler alerts, if you haven't played Metal Gear, I mean, sorry, it's been it's been 20 years, man, 19 years. Definitely longer than 20 years. It's been over 20 years since the first games came out in the Solid series. But, you know, when he comes back as Iroquois Pliskin, you kind of know, and you meet Otacon again. Like, I was like, cool, these characters are back. And I didn't care about playing as them. I liked playing as Raiden more sometimes because he could do the aerial. And he's a little faster. I didn't care that he was, you know, what he was. And I mean, like, wimpy. You know, it seemed wimpy, like whiny. That's the vibe that a lot of people seem to get. I didn't notice at the time. Now I do notice, but it also seems like it fits, you know, story arc. But whatever. I didn't care. I was really happy. And it just, yeah, when I got through with it, I loved those characters. I wanted to see more of Raiden, honestly. I was pretty invested in his story. Like, Snake seemed like a main character. Like, they seemed like the 2 main characters to me. Like, they seemed like if there's a Metal Gear Solid 3, it's going to be another Snake and Raiden game. That's how I came out of it. Not everyone else shared my sentiment. And then, yeah, I played the shit out of that game for years. About 2 years. And then the magazines, you know, I started seeing it. Started seeing the pictures of Snake in the jungle. And I remember that video game magazine. It was a Game Informer or something with Snake on the cover with the M16 covered in, you know, jungle face paint, wearing camo and shit. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. And it was. And then this is where I became a Metal Gear fan for life. Like, I love Metal Gear Solid 2, but it was just the best game I ever played. Like, I wasn't a fan of a video game creator. I wasn't a fan of a genre of games. It didn't it changed. I remember it changing how I thought about games. You know what I mean? Like, oh, all games need to be this awesome. But again, it was just about games as a whole. Metal Gear Solid 3, it was mainly like the year or whatever leading up to when I got it. Because I didn't get it at release. Like, I had to wait a couple of months because, you know, being a child. And parents don't understand that excitement. I do, though. I get it. And I'm going to make sure my kid's hooked up. If he comes to me with a game I'm so excited about, I'll do some research. If I deem it worthy, we'll pre-order that shit. Anywho. Yeah, I followed it in the magazines. I followed everything I could about it. And that's where I kept seeing... I'd already known, like, Hideo... What was it? Hideo Kojima game. I recognize the name and stuff, but I didn't really understand that that's like the director. Like, if you like Steven Spielberg movies, it's the same thing. It all started coming together, and I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I'm a fan of. And then I remember I got my hands on Metal Gear Solid 3 a couple of weeks. It was like December 5th or 6th before Christmas, because my parents really knew that I wanted it. I think they really, really felt it. I talked about it a lot. And they handed it to me a couple days early. They said, don't show your little brother. I was like 4, but he liked it. And I have a... real quick, before I get into Metal Gear Solid 3, I'm going to tell a funny story about MGS2. And then I'm going to stop and I'm going to look at the chat, see if Lawman's been talking shit about me. But I remember almost getting in trouble and my parents being like, well, we need to see this game. When my brother, who was about, all right, so we're 6 years apart, right? So I'm 10, he's about 4, right? 3 or 4. And he sees Raiden and he's like running along and he's just like, my brother Drew's cracking up, just like cackling to himself. I think my parents asked him what was so funny. He's like, yeah, that guy's got a big pee-pee. Talking about Raiden's giant bulge in his sneaking suit. So just a funny. And then my parents made me play the game in front of them for like an hour, which I was happy to do, actually. I remember telling them a bunch of like, all right, this is being really excited. And then I feel like I bored them. Like, all right, it's fine. You can go. You're safe, kid. So cool. All right, so quick commercial break while I look at the, let's see. Oh, Lawman. I'm talking mad shit. Horror games. Yeah, no, I don't like horror games either, Law. I really don't. For those listening on, again, the Patreon, please join me on twitch.tv/Wlog Live so you can interact. You could be a part of this, man. You could sway the way the shows go. It's like Matty Rockville did last time. And Lawman, I encourage you, if you want to listen to the audio versions of this, head on over to this is free. Everything else you got to pay for there, but patreon.com/AnthonyPodcast. You could hear that so loud. If you head over there, I post this for free there. So if you ever just want to listen to me talk without having to pull up the video, all versions of this are going to get posted there. So ad break over. Lawman, I do care. I care all the time. I care just for you, buddy. The bronze Belgian, the Belgian bomber himself. And you are technically a premium boy too, because if you sub Wlog Live, you are deemed the same privileges as a premium boy. Do not worry. Okay, let's talk about Metal Gear Solid 3, huh? Finally get my hands on the game. I had to do this, right, to avoid my brother, which I probably didn't have to go through all this trouble. My parents were really serious, like, don't let your brother see that you're playing this, like, which God, curse them, because they should have done that to me, man. I wanted to share it with my brother too, but he was also a little shit at that age, and I hope he's listening to this because he would definitely agree, 1,000%. He'd be like, I was definitely a little shit. I'm about to sneeze, and I'm not going to hold it like a professional. I'm going to do it. Here it comes, and don't leave me hanging. Ah, damn it, left me hanging. Whatever. I was supposed to keep it hidden from my brother, so what I did was I would get up super early. I did this for and school was still in. We hadn't hit Christmas break yet. I played this into Christmas break, though. I would get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and go play Metal Gear for a couple hours before I had to get up and go to school. And again, at this point, like the way I would play games, it's like I wanted to get through it as quick as possible, but I really took my time with this one. Having the experience I had already had with MGS2, I knew, because MGS3 wasn't that wildly different. It was, but it wasn't, in a sense. You know what I mean? Like, it had the same camera at first, because I had like the the fixed camera version, not the one that they fixed. But I didn't really notice at the time, because it felt like the same sort of camera angles, the same sort of like sectioned off gameplay, just outside and bigger and a lot bigger. So I played around with everything, the hunting, I played with all the toys that we were given in that new game. All the stuff that you wish you had in Metal Gear Solid 2. To me, every other game is different in its own way, but Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 really feel there's a lot of synchronicity there. I think that's the right word for that. They feel like they're one and the same. And Lawman, do I like bits? Of course I like bits. Dude, I take bits. I take subs. But do you want to know what would make you an absolute legend? I'm dead serious. If you go to patreon.com/the M3podcast, it's $5 a month to join, to get premium audio content. You don't have to, you're centralized here. So if you want to keep it here and throw bits at me, I take bits all day, baby. Because you're the man. You're the Belgian man of the house here, okay? There is no higher ranking Belgium here. None. Absolutely none. You reign supreme, my friend. If you can't do monthly things, then you throw bits. I'll take bits. I'll take whatever you got, because you're beautiful and you matter. But yeah, no, I understand that, dude. And that's the cool thing about like Twitch and bits and things like that. You can just kind of, you know what I mean? No worries. Bits are great. anything helps, man. Anything in the world helps me out. And I really appreciate it. So that's right. Yeah, there it is. Thank you very much for those. That is 500 bits, and it's about $5. I really appreciate that. That helps me out a lot, buddy. Lawman, you are a gem of a person, and one of these days I'll make a vlog about a topic you want to talk about. At the end of the stream, stay to the end. When I finish up, we'll have a chat about that when I stop this version of the vlog. But anyway. What can I buy with $5? Well, I could buy a lot. I could probably buy a copy of Metal Gear Solid somewhere at a thrift store. But I'll get to that near the end. I'm gonna finish rumbling on here with my Metal Gear stuff, and then at the end I'll have a chat. We'll talk about maybe getting your topic up here. We'll talk about the lawman life. All right. Where was I going before I was so politely interrupted with money from my friend Lawman? Pretty much the toys of Metal Gear Solid 3, yes. Playing around. I would get up early in the morning, play for a couple hours before school, and then I remember when Christmas break started, I went over to my friend Ryan's house, who's still my oldest friend to this day. We met in second grade. I'm almost 30, so it gives you an idea how long that friendship has endured. And then we finished it together, and I remember that. I remember the Shagohod race. I remember the burp count, which is now at 3. I do need to get a ticker in the corner. But I also remember just like the fight with Volgin. I remember getting choked up at the fight with the boss, and I think not wanting to do it in front of my friend who was not as invested. You know, he just thought it was a cool game. And I just remember wishing, and again, I loved hanging out with my friend, but I remember wishing I was by myself for it. I remember wishing I had finished it by myself instead of taking it to a friend's to do it with them. And again, not, still a really nice memory to have with someone. But I remember I finished MGS2 by myself, and it was cool. I get to feel things I never felt about, think about things I never felt, or think about things I never thought about because of the 20-minute speeches at the end. But Metal Gear Solid 3 was a lot like that, and I remember I immediately played through it again. Immediately went back through it on, I think, one harder difficulty. Because I don't usually play games on harder, but I think I played it on hard the second time, and just had I had a different experience with it playing it just by myself, and it was great. I was hook, line, sinker, just sold. I was like, I love this series. I want to know everything about it. I think at that point, I tried to maybe seek out Twin Snakes. I don't know when they did it. I can't remember if I got Twin Snakes before or after Metal Gear Solid 4. But I did get my hands on it, and it wasn't really just accessible to me. It just didn't really work. I couldn't make it click. I was never able to make it work with Metal Gear Solid 1. And I still haven't. And it breaks my heart because I love the story. It's incredible. I've watched it. I've watched the Twin Snakes version, a 5-hour movie, and I've watched the PS1 version, which is about 4 or 5 hours. Again, Kefka Productions, I'm so thankful for that whole page, that whole thing. They make really, 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 really great content. Where are we going? I'm gonna go somewhere else. Just Twin Snakes. I still have it, and I want to get through it again. But Metal Gear Solid 1 still eludes me, and I gotta do it. I gotta find the right way to do it. Finding a copy isn't super easy, but if I get the PS Classic, I don't have an issue playing it on that. We'll see. But I need to make it a priority to get MGS1 under my belt, playing it, actually experiencing it. Man, those controls are tough. They're really tough. It really makes you appreciate how accessible a PS2 game is compared to a PS1 game in most cases. Like that analog stick changed the fucking game. All right, so MGS4, it feels safe to go on to now. I bought a PS3 specifically for Metal Gear Solid 4. And now I didn't get a chance to play, again, Portable Ops and Peace Walker, I didn't play until later. I had played Portable Ops on my PSP a year or two ago. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of can, kind of not. Again, something else I watched. And then once I got a PSP on eBay, I was like, all right, I got to go get Portable Ops. And then Peace Walker I played when the HD collection came out on the 360. You know what I mean? Like, and I was in my second level of fandom in my late teens, early 20s. And yeah, Lawman, dude, PSPs kick ass. They're so great. It's seriously one of the best handhelds ever made. But there's been a lot of really good handhelds. There hasn't been too many shitty mainstream ones. A lot of the stuff that's come out has been good. The Vita, the PSP, the Switch, the DS, the Game Boy, even like Game Gear and shit was really cool. So, and God, you broke all your PSPs, Law. That breaks my heart. I broke one too. Not like, bro, it just stopped working. It was really fucking weird. It just like the disc wouldn't read. I was like, what the fuck? I took good care of it too. But the fourth game, I was a little older, you know, like this is 2008 when it came out. I wasn't able to get. I think it took me. I almost took like a small break from Metal Gear. I was on the Xbox 360, and I was kind of getting into other things. Again, I knew 4 was coming out. I knew about it. I saw the preview. Like, I was very excited about it, but I didn't. Again, I wasn't playing PlayStation. I skipped that. PS3 was super expensive. It wasn't appealing to me at that time. And they hadn't come out with the Pro yet, which I never ended up getting. If the PS3 Pro came out alongside like MGS4, that would have been day one. I would have gone and waited in line for that, but I didn't. It was still just felt expensive. I waited. I got a used PS3, you know, for like $200. It still felt like a lot. That didn't last me very long. That lasted me about, I think this is about 2010. I can't remember if I finished high school yet at this point, because 2010 was the year I finished high school. But no, I feel like it had to have been earlier than that. But I remember it was about a year and a half, 2 years after MGS4 came out, and after me, you know, YouTube was still a little early on with clips, but I kind of watched as much as I could, tried to understand as much as I could. But then I finally played it, and I loved it. I loved Metal Gear Solid 4, and I can't say it's my favorite. It's not. But it's still brilliant. It's still brilliant, and I loved the way it wrapped everything up. I liked kind of the happy ending. For fans of the series, yes, it was. I see all these videos. I saw someone create, and it's actually a really fucking great video. I can't remember who the creator is, and I feel bad, but it's like salty something. I don't know. It's like, Metal Gear Solid 4 was a giant mistake, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, nah, I think you're wrong. I think that's bullshit. But then it's like a 3-hour video, and it's hilarious. It's fucking good. And it made me laugh. Like, everything made me laugh. But I was like, I still don't agree with you. But yeah, this is funny. And you got to be able to laugh at yourself. Because as a fan, you have to understand that you're biased. I'm biased. Like, the public could probably be like, yeah, you should have done that. But as far as I know, a lot of fans loved it. Again, fan service. Makes sense, doesn't it? So maybe he's ultimately right after all. But I stand firmly behind that. Metal Gear Solid 4 was brilliant. A masterpiece. All of them, I feel like, are masterpieces in their own way. But the story, again, kind of like a retread of 1, which was nice. Because, again, I didn't play 1. I'm coming at this with a different perspective. I didn't really play 1 in the traditional sense. So it didn't feel like a retread to me. But it felt like it added a lot more context for things. It brought back a lot of characters from 1 that weren't in 2. And obviously 3 is a prequel. So we're already in 4. So like there's characters that haven't shown up since 1. Meryl, Silverberg, Naomi Hunter, Mei Ling. I'm trying to think of other ones too. Like just that you see for the first time in a really long time, 10 years in this game, that I really enjoyed meeting and seeing in glorious HD. And seeing them interact with Snake, who was old Snake at this point. And I remember hurting for that. Like, I remember the entire game being really sad. It was very emotional playing as old Snake, because you're like, this character is dying. They tell you, you got a couple months to live, man. Like, you're on your way out. And I remember seeing in the trailers, and they wouldn't do this shit anymore. They don't get this edgy in-game trailers, but, like, it ended with a gun in Snake's mouth. You know, it's like shoved in there, too. Kind of uncomfortably. But, he has to, and I was like, why does he have to kill himself? What the fuck? But so many things perplex me. But I mean, the gameplay is so smooth. The combat, you can play it like an action game, which that's that's what does throw me off and why it isn't my favorite. You know, it's just sometimes it's a little like the buy-in of the weapons, and it just felt a product of its time. But then, Hideo Kojima liked that kind of inventory management stuff. You see it in Peace Walker. You see it in a lot of it carried over. 4 and 5 are very closely related, even though there's a lot of time. It's like 7 years between them. 5 obviously has like incredible gameplay, but they really did they tried to make you enjoy the experience of playing in a special ops fucking killer's body like Solid Snake. So I appreciate that. And they did great with the cutscenes and storylines, but sometimes I could take or leave some of the gameplay. Honestly, it felt less intense sometimes than 2 or 3, but loved it nonetheless. I remember the 27-minute cutscene, the infamous one. I loved all of it, and I remember getting very emotional and shedding tears at the end. I remember that, and that pause was not me beginning to remember that. That was me holding back another burp. The burp count remains at 3. But yeah, I remember just really, and then the wedding at the end and the sort of happy ending, In 2008, Snake is dead. He died. That's how it did end. Ultimately, they didn't revisit the Solid story, but they're pretty much like, yeah, you got about a year or two, but it's a year or two in peace, and that's that bittersweetness. Like, he couldn't have a fully happy ending. Live the rest of his life as David, which was his real name. Which I remember the first time I found that out. I freaked out. Thought it was super cool. But no, you don't get that. In today's timeline, there's no feasible way that he's alive unless they reverse aged him. Unless they bring, unless Konami really cheapened that feeling and brought him back in some kind of way that wasn't a remake. If they remake 1, if they do like remakes like they're doing with Final Fantasy, I think 1 is, you shouldn't do it with 2, 3. Leave those alone. Those are fine. But Metal Gear Solid 1 and the original 16-bit, Nintendo, just Metal Gear games. Yeah, they would do really well with a remake. I would support that. That's where you should go with the series. Hideo's gone. Don't try to make more, man. Metal Gear Survive. This is the only time you're going to hear me talk about Metal Gear Survive. Don't be a Metal Gear Survive. Just remake the good stuff. The IP has enough, man. You don't need to write anymore. Honestly, the story's finished itself. It's a complete circle now. And once I get to Metal Gear Solid 5, I'll explain how you don't need to make it anymore. It's a complete circle. There's no more, as a fan, there's no need for any more added lore. But I guess that brings me to 5 now, because there was that big gap. So I remember my PS3 survived, like that shitty PS3 survived just long enough to finish that game. Maybe like 6 months later, it like stopped reading discs, and I'd already gotten rid of it. And then just nothing for a really long time. I feel like there was other stuff, like they released the HD remaster, which kept, again, my fandom after 4 that's where this started. That's where me getting, and I remember where I'm at in the camera right there. You can see in the corner. I got that Foxhound tattoo in like 2012. 11 or 12, I think 11, because that was when, again, the HD collection came out, and I played through all of them again, and I played Peace Walker for the first time on console. It felt like a console game to me. It was such a good HD, like remaster, remake, whatever you want to call it. But I loved that, and that felt like a new experience, and I was satiated. I felt complete. Honestly, if that was the end of Metal Gear, I was really happy that it went out on the HD collection. That was cool. I never played the Metal Gear Solid Complete Collection, the one that came out on PS3. Yet I didn't have one at this point, I didn't really know about it. But I would loved that HD collection so much. That could have been it. And if that was it, that this tattoo over here is still worth it, and I feel still apt, and I'd be just as big of a fan. But then I start seeing the shit for Metal Gear Solid 5, and I start getting hyped because games had progressed, and I was really into open world games at this point. Maybe, what was this, 2013 when they started showing shit for it? 13, 14, something like that, or 12. It could be, you guys, I'm bad with the dates, but I remember what I felt. And I remember being like, fuck yeah, let's do this shit. Like, we're going back, we get to be Big Boss again. I was like, cool. Like, Solid Snake's story is done. And it's done. He goes off to essentially live out the rest of his very brief life in peace. And he does, with his sort of adopted daughter. And roommate? Monica. Little Sappho and her friend action. So, yeah, just I was happy to figure out more about Big Boss, how he became him. Again, learning through Peace Walker. Like, there's more to this guy. Why did he become who he was? Even though in 4 they kind of do wrap it up, like they don't make him seem super evil, but he still is evil. It's just weird. It's like a two sides to every story thing. But like in the original Metal Gear games, they make him seem like an evil. It's like, haha, I fooled you. But then they give him a lot more humanity, obviously, the other ones. So, I was so hyped. I saw the video of him like calling the helicopter with the smoke grenades, being like, oh my fucking God, I'm going to lose my mind. I love this. And then the game comes out. I remember playing through it. I had just moved into my first place that wasn't my parents with my very new family. My girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. My voice cracked there. I'm still a kid in love. But no, my now wife. And my then, I think about, not even 1-year-old child yet. So a very new family. So I wasn't buying very many new games. I had barely just, been able to afford a PS4. We were keeping things really tight. But that game I did buy as soon as I had the opportunity to. As soon as it released. Like, I had it released. I had it downloaded on my PS4. Lawman, I'll help you do clip stuff at the end. I'm almost done here. We'll do a final wrap up here. And then we'll do just viewer interaction time. I get it. I sit down, I play it, and I was very invested in it. It wasn't told in a way that I'm used to Metal Gear games being told in. Except the intro was. The intro, I love. A lot of people hate that shit. That intro is what I expected out of a Metal Gear game. That's kind of what I wanted. Story-driven. I would have liked a little more character control, but I was like, okay, it's just the tutorial. There's going to be a lot more mechanics. They're going to be teaching me a lot of shit. Just roll with it, So, I did. But then they kind of thrust you out into the open world, and then the way that it was all structured with the missions, and I don't like the way that game's structured. I don't like selecting the missions like that. If you know, my dog has decided to become a co-host, and I appreciate her for that. But I don't like the way that game's laid out. I don't like the way you're taken from story point to story point. I don't like the structure of the whole game. I feel like it has the worst structure out of any Metal Gear game. Again, Metal Gear Survive doesn't count. So yes, Lawman, there's doggo. Millie needs to find a spot, get comfy, and then chill. There she goes, little couch love. And it is a female dog. She is a girl dog, a bitch, as they would say. I didn't like the way it was structured, but I still loved, the gameplay was so incredible to me. And you know what? I did enjoy, I, again, played with everything, did everything. I did stealth runs, I did non-lethal runs, I just played the shit out of the game, played the shit out of it. I remember finishing it, and then, to get the true ending or whatever, at this point, I'm not invested in the story at all, though. I'm not one bit invested in the story of this game because I was having a lot of fun with the gameplay, but as you know, it just wasn't, it was chopped up. It wasn't making sense to me. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. Especially, I played every game in the series, and I felt like, God, I feel lost. What the fuck are you guys talking about? I didn't like the new voice actors, which I can understand recasting Big Boss, but I didn't like it. Just that, the presentation, the structure, no, I really, really, really didn't like it. But that gameplay is so good. And the first time you went through it, it was just unreal. Being able to kind of infiltrate on your own terms. Playing Ground Zeroes, for people who aren't familiar, it's sort of was like the prequel, kind of a demo, kind of not. It wasn't a demo. It was more than that. But like, you know, the Camp Omega level. Like, it was just really cool being in there, you know, slinking around. It was just, that felt great. And that, I wasn't even it made me happy doing that. I wasn't thinking about the story. I wasn't thinking about what was being left out. I didn't know about the drama and how it was kind of unfinished. But Metal Gear Solid 5 is a lot less memorable in my mind because the story didn't match the gameplay. The gameplay was incredible. It was some of the best action gameplay anybody could ever. It's just responsive, smooth, just fucking works, man, and it's fun. But if it was any other game, I would probably be like, this is the greatest game of all time. But it was a Metal Gear game, and it left something to be desired in the way it's put together. And that's just coming from a fan. The average video, you got a bunch of 10 out of 10s, and rightfully so. As a video game, yeah, it's a 10 out of 10. But as a Metal Gear story, no, I don't think it is. Still, enjoyed it nonetheless. And all in all, that's sort of my experience with Metal Gear. I've played some of the other ones, like the 8-bit ones, but I've just, again, watched, you know, the movies that Kefka puts out. And it's just what I've always wanted a game to be. 2 and 3 mainly. Like, that feeling is what I'm always chasing in any single player game. And a game like Ghost of Tsushima, which really is one of it's one of the games that's come closest to making me feel that Metal Gear Solid type feeling in a really long time. Because it has the smooth gameplay, the great storytelling, the way it's paced is really great. But like, that's what I need a game to be now. And it sets a high bar. It really does. But I adore the series. If you've never played one, which, again, if you're into games, you probably have. But even if you're not into games or you're kind of on the outliers, like, oh, I kind of play sometimes, Metal Gear is something I would really recommend. Even if you're not really a skilled gamer, playing it on easy mode just to get through the story and understand how the combat and all that kind of ties into the story, definitely worth it. Definitely worth your time. You can get the HD remasters on you can get it on PS5 now if you wanted to, as far as I know. But those are great ways to play it. The 2, 3, and Peace Walker HD remasters are great. The only way your ass is getting 4 is if you have a PS3 or if you have PS Now. That one's like harder to play for some reason. And then obviously 5, any modern console you can play Metal Gear Solid 5 on. 1, you can find it on the PS Classic or whatever. And that's it for the Wlog portion of the stream, okay? Thanks for coming. If you're listening on twitch.tv, /Walski Live. All right, brain farted there. Thank you, I appreciate you. We're gonna hang out a little longer here. But if you're listening at patreon.com/the M3 podcast, I'm glad you're here. Again, you can tell your friends to listen to this because this post is free, and maybe this will encourage them to spend their $5 here and join us in Premium World. But if they just like listening to this, hey, it's free. Stick around. I won't berate you too much. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Who knows? But I want to thank my wonderful patrons. We have, and let me look them up here so I make sure I get the names right because they're fucking hilarious. God, the new webcam is really nice. I'm just noticing now like how beneficial it is. When I first plugged it in, I was like, it can't be that much better, but it definitely is. So these are our beautiful patrons. We have Matthew W. Rockville, we have Nick Smitty, we have Mac Laves, and we have our newest addition, a good friend of mine who on Patreon is going by Chives Banger. So Chives, my friend, the Banger, welcome to the fold, welcome to the gang. We're happy you're here. All right, Wlog,